Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 AM WFTL. This is Outlaw, America's alternative voice.
Streaming around the world at outlawshow.com.
This week, we focus on HIV and the law with special guest Steve Fallon of Skills 4 and Pembroke Pines City Commissioner Angelo Castillo. Your host for Outlaw, equal rights activist and former Fort Lauderdale City Commissioner, Dean Trantalis.
Good evening. My name is Dean Trantalis, and welcome to Outlaw, America's alternative voice. Tonight we will talk about HIV, AIDS, and the law. We're speaking not so much about treatment, but more about education, prevention, as well as cares provided by service organizations here in the Broward County area. My guests tonight are Angelo Castillo, who's president of Broward House, as well as a city commissioner from the city of Pembroke Pines. Welcome, Mr. Castillo.
Good to see you, Dean.
Thank you for coming here tonight. And our other guest, Dr. Stephen Fallon, who has been an HIV educator here in Broward County for many years. Welcome again, Stephen.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you for being here. Before our show begins, we will cut to a commercial, and we'll be right back.
The real estate market is tough these days, and that's why you need the Henry Frank Group. When you sell with the Henry Frank Group, you get an agency and people who have global real estate knowledge and outreach with an extensive and impressive sales record in the South Florida real estate market. The Henry Frank Group is a RE/MAX preferred real estate agency, able to marshal the resources of a J.D. Power & Associates award-winning brokerage, all while providing you with the personal service commitment that gets results. The Henry Frank Group. Call Henry at 954-465-6615 or Frank at 954-604-9999. Whether buying a new home, investing for your future, or selling prime real estate, the Henry Frank Group knows South Florida's real estate market, from Miami to Fort Lauderdale to Palm Beach. Call Henry at 954-465-6615 or Frank at 954-604-9999. Henry Frank Group. We know South Florida real estate. This is Outlaw, America's alternative voice, with your host, Dean Trantalis.
News Talk 850.
And welcome back. This is our 11th show of Outlaw, America's alternative voice, as we continue the journey into an historic approach to educate, challenge, and to provoke listeners into hearing and understanding issues that clearly affect members of the gay community, as well as their families, their friends, and co-workers. This is the first time a South Florida radio program will feature matters that exclusively focus on the gay community, and each week it will be presenting guests who will speak to us about a topic most likely you've heard about in the news. We will explore history, we will entertain hopes, and we will invite you, the listener, to call in and participate. Our phone number here at the station is 877-850-8585. That's 877-850-8585. The show can also be heard on the internet at outlawshow.com. The gay community is often referred to as the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered community, LGBT for short. Each day, its members are challenged by discrimination and the consequences of bigotry that are often left unchecked by rules that govern our society. Outlaw will serve as a new voice, an alternative voice to messages most often heard in the mainstream media. It will act as an outlet for those whose voices cannot otherwise be heard, and through this dialogue it will hopefully uncover new ways to put an end to injustice and inequality. As I mentioned to you earlier, we are honored to have two guests tonight who have been important members of the HIV/AIDS community and the progress that it has shown itself here in Broward County. Again, I'd like to introduce you to City Commissioner from the City of Pembroke Pines, Angelo Castillo, who's also President of Broward House. Good evening, Angelo.
Good to see you, Dean.
Angelo, tell me a little bit about what Broward House is and how you became part of it.
Well, I joined Broward House in 2003. And at that time, it was a long-standing provider of HIV services and housing services in Broward County. Today, we are the oldest and largest provider of HIV and housing services.
Now, when you say housing services, does that mean anybody with HIV can come and knock on your door and say, I need a place to stay?
Well, certainly anyone who knocks on the door, we're going to try and help them. What we do is our service is behavioral health, it's medical, it's alcohol and substance abuse. We provide case management, we provide prevention services, but we also provide housing in a variety of ways. We provide independent living opportunities for people who live in apartments under our care, and we also provide an assisted living facility for those with HIV who need to recuperate.
Are there certain income requirements that you have to fulfill? Do you have to be indigent in order to partake in the services that you offer?
It is a program as funded by the government that requires low income, yes.
So essentially it's for persons who are low income or indigent individuals who are who have HIV or AIDS and who are either chemically or some substance abuse history that you try to help them out in all corners here? Is that basically what you're saying?
At some point, many of the people who we meet have a wide variety of underlying conditions, separate and apart from HIV, that they present with. However, you don't have to be addicted to substance abuse or mentally ill in order to receive our services. You simply have to be someone who is HIV positive.
Now, as I understand it, and help me along here, in the early days of HIV, many people were denied housing. Mm-hmm. People would go and try to rent an apartment or try to become part of a condominium community. And the laws at that time did not prevent the discrimination against persons with HIV and AIDS. And it was Broward House part of the answer to that?
I think it was. I mean, I've been around now in HIV services for quite a long time. My first experience working with HIV services was with the city of New York, and that was back in the 80s. And the problem existed then. There was tremendous hysteria about HIV and AIDS because people didn't understand what it was. At the time that Broward House was created in the late 80s, in Broward County, there was no specific program that was available to meet with the medical needs of persons with AIDS who were low income. And that was the genesis of what actually created Broward House, initially with our assisted living facility, which at that time was a place where low-income people with AIDS basically went to pass away, went to die. Today, it is a place where they can go in the midst of a short-term need for assisted living and continue moving on. It is a place where people live with AIDS.
But it's not a long-term facility. It's
no.
Almost like you accept the person, you give them a roof over their head, and do you supply them with vocational needs, or do you supply them simply with trying to get people put on a treatment program?
We have a variety of variety of services that we administer together with assisted living. We are a licensed assisted living center facility under the state law, but everyone who comes into our assisted living facility is referred there by their physician for a condition that needs assistance with the needs of daily living. And so while they're there, we diagnose them, we give them a full psychosocial health assessment, and if there are underlying unmet needs, if they have a substance abuse issue, they'll participate in our programs. If they have a mental health issue, we will help to stabilize them as well. So we don't ignore anything about what the client comes to us with. And then from there, hopefully what we can do is place them in a setting where they can continue to live with AIDS independently, and we continue to monitor them, and we very, very frequently keep an association with those patients and clients throughout their lives.
Well, tell me a little bit about the demand for your services. In the late 80s, obviously, this was a newly discovered disease, and and has tell us about the population, the numbers, the demographic. Where is it going? What figures do you have to tell us about?
Well, Broward House is one of many very, very high quality. In fact, I don't know of any provider in Broward County, and there are a number of us who provide services to the HIV community that don't do an excellent job. We're merely one of them. However, our organization deals with 6,000 people a year, but far and away more than any other. And it's because of the breadth of the services that we provide. We're the only provider in Broward that offers services and housing. I remember years ago, the big debate was, do you put your money into services or housing? And there were two camps on that. Well, Broward House always had the sense of realizing that both are essential and both need to be provided. In terms of numbers, you should know that we're very, very concerned. We're very concerned about the state of HIV, not just nationwide, where we have people who are advocating on behalf of the Fort Lauderdale metropolitan area at the national level, but also locally. Let me give you some statistics. The CDC does an HIV surveillance report.
The CDC meaning?
That's the Centers for Disease Control, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, does an HIV surveillance report periodically. And they have determined that the Fort Lauderdale area has the highest rate of newly diagnosed HIV cases in the United States.
Fort Lauderdale?
Yes. The national average is 60, slightly over 60 out of 100,000 people has HIV or AIDS. And
who's getting it? Who's contracting it?
Well, what we're seeing is a shift. When I first started in HIV and services, it was predominantly white gay males. Mm-hmm. And now what we're seeing, and what we've increasingly seen over the years, is that HIV is the virus that doesn't discriminate. We see it in virtually all of the populations. It does not discriminate by characteristics of birth or chance. We see women with HIV, we see seniors with HIV, we see young people with HIV, increasingly young people, and that's very worrisome to us. Among young people today, they've lost the horror for HIV because the medications that are available and the treatments that are available are so much better than they used to be. One can live with HIV approximating normal life expectancy. However, that life is a life of great challenge. Physical challenge, psychological challenge, and what we do is we try to send the message out as widely as possible that people should stay positive and be negative.
Right.
And what we're seeing today is people are being negative about that message, and they're becoming positive, and that's very worrisome to us.
Dr. Fallon, you're hearing a few of the words by the commissioner. Tell us a little bit about your experience. First of all, let's talk about you a little bit. How did you get involved in HIV/AIDS?
I started out volunteering as a buddy when I was teaching at Clemson University in the mid-'90s. Then when I came down to South Florida, I started working full-time in education at an old organization called Center One, which
is where we met. Which
is where I met you, and
right.
You served as a visionary director of development. I wish people had respected the vision, because I think you could have buttressed the fortress for longer. Center One went under. Unfortunately, Broward House was here to pick up the pieces. Mm-hmm. But soon after Center One started to crumble, I went on the national scene. So I wear two hats now. One is I consult nationally in HIV,
but you're
and
not
other
wearing any hat tonight,
right? and the other is I run a very small nonprofit here in Broward County. I'm the executive director of Latinos Salud. Broward House is the oldest and largest. Latinos Salud is the youngest and smallest, but has the corazon.
But the Latinos Salud organization, is it meant? Is it directed for the purpose of HIV education and prevention, or does that have another mission involved?
Yes, so we opened up to serve a gap in prevention services specifically for Latino men who have sex with men, gay or bisexual.
So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be out there and you're on the stump trying to educate young and old of any national origin Tell us a little bit about what your work consists of and the types of messages that you try to project out in the community.
That's a big one. There's been huge
Answer one at a time.
There are huge changes of late. What the CDC, which Angelo mentioned earlier, has paid for in the past has been various scientifically studied programs that either counsel individuals or bring people into a room for several meetings to try to build their perception of risk.
This is the negative.
The HIV negative community, right? And to build their skill sets using condoms, and to build peer support for safer sex, as well as for HIV positive individuals to disclose their status to sexual partners and or protect them. That's all about to change, but that's a summary of where we've been for the past dozen years.
So that has been the approach over the last, as you say, the last dozen years, trying to make it okay to ask to wear a condom, it's okay to bring up the subject if you're engaged in some kind of sexual encounter. So what is about to change?
Wow.
Can you reveal it on tonight's program?
Well, yes, I can, because I have an opinion about it. Let's switch subjects for a second so people can picture this. Okay. Imagine, you've probably heard about, they're working on computers that they'll put in cars that will keep you from drifting lanes or slamming into a car in front of you.
Correct.
Let's say they perfected that.
Okay.
And let's say they wanted to put it in every car. What that could conceivably mean is you and your passenger are much safer in your car because you're not going to crash into anything. Now, however, what if they said the only way we can afford to put this in all the new cars is by getting rid of everything else? So we're no longer going to do driver's education. We're no longer going to do public service announcements saying wear your seatbelt and don't drink and drive. We're no longer going to pull over speeders. We're going to put all of our faith in just the computer in the car.
Okay.
That's what CDC is doing.
But what is it that they're going to do?
The computer in this case is treatment. Their focus is treatment as prevention. Go identify everybody living with HIV, drag them into the clinic whether they want to be tested or not, get them tested, and then force feed them medications whether they're ready to take them or not, because a study showed that significantly lowers their chances of passing HIV to their partner. The problem with this line of thinking, though, is that they're putting almost all of their resources there. If, back to the analogy of the car, if you had that fancy computer to keep you from crashing into something, it doesn't stop people who don't have that computer from crashing into you.
Right.
So it's not that the treatment as prevention, which is what they call it, it's not that strategy is flawed. It's a great new tool, but it's being treated as the only tool. And they're going to step significantly away from all others to the tune of 75% of funding is going to go straight to this.
See, when you said, that this was going to be controlled by some sort of computer mechanism, for some reason, as you were talking, all I could think of was there was a new app on someone's iPhone, and that when you were about to approach into a sexual encounter, that would buzz in your pocket to put a condom on.
That would be great. Actually, there is an application for men who have sex with men who are seeking partners. They call it Grindr, and I'm hoping they put some messaging on that so there'll
some
be
ads for Trojans.
But right now, the analogy is that technology in cars is computers, in HIV it's medicines, and they're putting all their faith in the medicines.
Is it their faith or their budget? Is it that they?
It's much more expensive.
It's more expensive.
It's much more expensive.
So anybody who is in a high risk demographic, or who is HIV positive already, is going to be kind of corralled into this treatment program, as you say.
Exactly. Test and treat. Treatment is prevention. Yeah.
So if a person's HIV negative, how are they impacted by this?
Oh, hugely. I mean, imagine, first of all, if word spreads widely that treatment does lower the chances of somebody passing HIV. If the word spreads widely, but the adoption of this strategy isn't wide enough, what you're going to have is the entire HIV negative community thinking that HIV is no longer anything to worry about, because isn't everybody who's HIV positive on treatment and therefore no longer contagious?
And so their viral load is so low that they won't contract anything? Is
right.
That kind
and
of the
then,
thinking?
so just as right now, many people don't ask somebody if they're positive because I'm in love with you, you're sexy to me, you look healthy, why would I ask?
Right.
So too, in the future, I can imagine a future where people say, there's no need to ask because everybody who's positive is treated, and therefore I don't need to practice safer sex anymore. It's the positive person's job to protect me. It's time for you to take your pills for me.
Right. So how does that? I mean, you're perhaps not, the qualified person to talk about this, but in terms of civil rights. But I mean, when you're saying that people are going to be required to undergo treatment, I mean, isn't there a right in this country not to undergo treatment if you don't want to?
Yes, and it's not going to be a legal, we're going to throw you in jail if you don't do it. It's just going to be a strong pressure. And I do think there's certain ethical issues related to that. There's the only other disease I can think of that comes to mind where we do induce treatment on people whether they want it or not is people who have multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. But there's a world of difference there because MDR tuberculosis is spread casually through breathing in the air. HIV is spread through sexual contact or shared needles. So unlike a person in a room with somebody with TB who might get it without any choice, somebody in a room with somebody with HIV has a choice to have protected sex or not with them. So we don't need this heavy push of treating people. One of the other reasons I'm slightly opposed to this, Dean, is that we don't really know, as fantastic as the treatments have become for my friends living with HIV, we don't really know what's going to be the consequence of putting people on treatment so much earlier than what used to be indicated, throwing them on treatment an extra decade earlier. Some of these treatments cause med-induced hepatitis, med-induced diabetes, degradation of the hips, so people get bone fractures in their 30s as if they were 80. Quality of life that Mr. Castillo was referring to, some of the medications cause people to have diarrhea or vomiting every single day. All of these things are worth it if you have HIV and it's progressing to the point where it's going to kill you. But is it worth it to throw you on treatment right away, which may not increase your life expectancy, just for the sake of protecting somebody else?
Well, it sounds to me like the strategy is twofold. Number one, it sounds to me like they've thrown in the towel because they feel that, on the one hand, there has been an effort to try to educate people through the manners in which you described earlier, and secondly, now it seems like they've given in, like it's not working, so they can't rely on human behavior to respond to the educational approach. They now have to force feed. They now have to protect them from themselves, government. Exactly. And therefore, this is the approach they're now undertaking.
And it's so worrisome to me because there's already so little money for HIV prevention. Out of the entire U.S. HIV/AIDS budget, only 3% goes to prevention right now. The amount of money that we spend on HIV prevention in the entire United States is equal to the amount of money that the airlines profited from baggage fees last year. That's how small it is.
Wow. Well, we are taking calls tonight, and you've heard quite a bit of provocative information from both of our guests. Our phone number tonight is 877-850-8585. If I can get back to you, Mr. Castillo, tell us a little bit about your understanding of the prevention methods that Broward House has undertaken. We have a few minutes before our break, but I know that you had said that Broward House is part of the HIV prevention portion of this disease. So tell us a little bit about what Broward House has been doing to participate in this.
Well, our chief prevention program right now is a program called Empowerment, and Empowerment focuses on young men who are at risk for contracting HIV. And what we do is we provide a wraparound service to them that allows them to mingle and create a community of support among people who are committed to staying HIV-free. And this has shown scientifically shown some benefits of keeping people healthy. We are willing to provide, frankly, any reasonable effort in the area of prevention that we can afford to provide. Sometimes we have to dig deep into our own resources. For example, we're getting ready now to bring out a teen suicide prevention effort because no one else will fund it. I should say interestingly, terribly enough. So we have to self-fund it. However, I think that
the government has no program to educate at the teenage level?
There's really no funding stream to do that right now. And so we've been collecting some dollars, and we're going to be putting together that effort on our own because it's important for our own young people. But I think that what Dr. Fallon has just said is right on the money. There is a great deal of concern about this use of HIV meds for prophylaxis, when in fact We have people with AIDS right now who are having difficulty on the ADAP waiting list. And these are folks who are sick. And the great thing about the meds that we have right now is if you take them, and if you take them on an ongoing basis, it can reduce, and often does, your viral load to next to non-detectable. That is more important from a public health perspective for everyone else that individual may encounter than it is for them, which is a wonderful thing. They're not only getting better, but as their viral load decreases to non-detectable, their chances of passing it along are less likely. So it seems to me that we can't just have a shifting of these resources from everything else that's important to this new sort of area, but that's what we're facing.
Well, in terms of the education approach to this, exactly, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this after the break, but it seems to me that that there have been many approaches to try to, first of all, raise the awareness of the disease within various communities, and certainly within the gay community, the gay male community, the awareness has been certainly out there. They certainly know how to put on a good fundraiser. They certainly know how to spread the word. They've changed the vocabulary in many ways. The word condom is now not as forbidden as it may have been in the past, and we have so many new areas, however, to break into, because there are clearly other communities in which the vocabulary, the message, and the emphasis is not been as pronounced as it has been in the gay male community. So when we come back from our break, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about where these prevention methods are being introduced. And Dr. Fallon, I'd like to talk to you also about the efforts you've been making, particularly in the Latino community. And because it seems to me that the message is being lost or forbidden amongst certain areas of the population. And based on what you told us earlier about the progression of the numbers in various communities, we seem to be on the road to a losing battle in trying to spread the HIV virus. So we'll be right back, and there'll be a lot more to hear about. Again, our number is 877-850-8585.